Hey guys, how y'all doing? My name is Kieran, and this is Fox Off RPG. Today, I'm joined by Christopher Wilson, who is a very interesting guest, I might say. Now, Christopher, do you want to tell the people who exactly you are and what do you do?
Oh, well, what do I do? I am the creator of the Braunhaven campaign setting. The first edition of which was available or is still available for Old School Essentials Advanced Fantasy, and now second edition is primarily available for Castles and Crusades. Although the adventures are also being done in a format for OSC as well. Aside from that, I run games. I've got two Traveler games that I run each week
Oh
uh,
wow,
on
I didn't
Wednesday
actually
and
realize
Friday
that.
nights.
Is this
Yeah,
Classic Traveler or
this is Mongoose second edition,
okay?
and we try to keep it as up to date as possible. With all of the update books are now coming out that are they have some minor tweaks to rule changes that are are very helpful in most cases.
Okay.
So we try to keep it as up to date as possible. So yeah, I run Traveler games online Wednesday and Friday night, and those are usually uploaded to my YouTube channel. But aside from that, the rest of the week, I live and breathe Braunhaven, and I'm constantly thinking about new and inventive ways to torment players across the world with whatever with whatever design I come up with. So,
That's brilliant. Now I will leave in the pinned comment and description where you can follow all your links. It's going to be like YouTube, your drive through, and any other links you may have. But yeah, let's get into Braunhaven.
sure.
So, how did Braunhaven start? Was this just like your home game, and you're like, okay, this is a cool setting. Let's blow it up and put it out there for people to enjoy.
It's funny. I think that Braunhaven actually came about in a fairly. It wasn't anything profound. It was probably the same thought process that has happened to many game masters, right? Probably about it was probably about mid 20. No, it was probably about the fall of 2020. The pandemic had just spent its first 6 or 7 months of torturing us, and at the time I was running games for a local game shop. And when the pandemic hit, of course, everything around here closed down.
Mhm.
And Meaning the game shop, of course, especially the game shop, because you can't have a scenario like that where everybody's not in close contact. And so they shut down, and I just told the players, I'm like, well, we don't need to play at the game shop. I have a game room at my apartment, and we can just move everything there. And we did. And it was during that time, I think we were playing fifth edition D&D, and I think that we were running through the latter half of Tomb of Annihilation,
Mhm.
and their last big. I guess it's not the last one, but one of their Disneyland type books. Oh, here's the ride, everybody get on. And so at that time, well, I would say that particular adventure was actually particularly, or that mini campaign was pretty good. It had a lot of um, ingenious ideas, I guess you could say. But there was a lot of other things going on, especially with WotC's handling of uh, the Forgotten Realms,
Mhm.
um, and somewhat to a lesser extent their handling of Greyhawk. If you looked through some of their anthology series of adventures, there there were some strange changes that were made for really no reason. And
Mhm.
I thought to myself at the time, I was like, it would be great to just bite the bullet and create my own campaign setting. Just create my own world. And I think every GM anywhere has had that thought, right?
Yeah.
What I ran into fairly soon. At the time, I didn't have access to my old AD&D books, right? Those had been lost in one move or another from my childhood, and so all I had was the DMG from 5th edition, and I found that it's very limiting for anybody to create their own setting. First of all, the problem with that DMG that I found was that it will have a section to give the game master advice. And then you go to that section, and that advice is limited to maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs. It doesn't delve in very deep. It doesn't really answer any questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a problem that I ran into. The other issue is that most of the stuff that you find in the 5th edition DMG, I found, was their idea of basically home baking your own campaign. Was it's okay if you guys want to do your own stuff, as long as you do it in our format that is basically the generic crap that we've put out for every world. And
Okay.
and so I found that very limiting. And I kind of felt like I was running into a wall. And so it basically, the idea of Braunhaven got shelved for at least a year. But it was always sitting in the back of my head. And the idea behind it was that when I was a kid, I started playing D&D basic and expert box sets in '79,
Mm-hmm.
and there wasn't, at least we didn't have access to it at any of the stores I went to. There wasn't a campaign world source book or a box set. Now I did finally run it. I think it was in '81. I finally ran across the Greyhawk box set, and that was huge. But we didn't have that. Instead, what you had was you would buy an adventure module, say B1,
Yeah.
and then you would run through that, and then you would go and you would buy B2, and when you ran through that one, it added another small piece to the world map,
Yeah.
or another piece of the story as well. And so you would go through, 4 or 5, maybe 10 of these modules, and by the time you were done, you had a big map showing what this section of the world looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked that because it gave the game master bite-sized chunks, right? Allowing you to get your feet wet, and that was very attractive to me at the time of creating an entire world, because that can be quite daunting. You thinking, oh my God, I have to come up with all these different kingdoms and realms and continents, and it
Yeah.
seems like an insurmountable challenge. And so this idea of taking it in bite-sized chunks was very attractive. And so the idea was, it will start with a town, the town of Braunhaven, and all the weird stuff that's going on, or alluding to a greater threat. And each piece of that first edition campaign added a little bit of something to the world, and it just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, because I was looking, I got some of your stuff before, like I said, before when we were talking, and you sent me some other stuff later on, which was great. Thank you for that as well. Like, you don't have to, but it's absolutely brilliant. But like, when you look through the books, you see you have some books where called atlases as well, and they expand upon the world. And there's going to be a lot more information, but even within there is a lot of stuff you can use for actual practical use. Like you said before, like 5e, so the 5e stuff is, or the 5e GMG. DMG. You're like, there was no like real practical information or advice how to do anything. But this, what you have it laid out is, so okay, here's an area, here's a bunch of information about the area that's going to be relevant for players and referees, and here's a bunch of creatures and monsters and stuff that's going to be around in that area as well. And you give sort of like in sections, and it works out really well. How you've done it, and as well when you have the adventures that you've put out as well individually, you're adding, like you said, you're adding more, or you're going into more detail in some areas, which again, it's sort of talking about exactly what you just said.
Well, and one of the things that I continue this on with the second edition stuff for Castles and Crusades. One of the things that I've always run across as a dungeon master in D&D, and I'm going to say that this is a problem with Mongoose Traveler second edition as well, right?
Mhm.
So you get it, you have the players, the characters get into an area, and there's going to be a big fight.
Mhm.
The problem with 5e and currently Mongoose second edition Traveler is that in order to get the stat block for the opponents, for the NPCs in that area, you then have to flip through a dozen or more pages to get to their index section where they keep all of this stuff. My goal when I'm doing these adventures, if there's going to be an encounter, bam, stat block right there at the end of that encounter. You don't have to flip the page. It's right there. Move through the encounter and move on. And it saves wear and tear on your book. I mean,
Yeah.
You're not having to fiddle through a bunch of pages and, putting stress on the spine, and it takes time. It's just annoying. And it
Yeah.
also leads to you, because you're in a hurry to find it, it leads to you losing stuff or missing things that you don't necessarily want to miss. So I try to put all of that information. If there's a magic item, it's right there. If there's a monster, it's right there. You don't have to flip through pages.
Yeah. Because what you're saying there, sometimes that can break tension as well.
Right.
If things aren't, like, oh, give me a minute. It's like, Now, so sometimes it does depend on the game as well and how things are running, but like, that can be a problem. Like, it's different if you have a book that's 30 pages long. You don't mind if all the creature stuff is on the back on
Right.
the 2-page spread. It's like,
Yeah,
okay,
that's not
fine.
a big deal, right?
Yeah, but if you have like a 300-page book and it's like, okay, it's a page 362, but I'm on page 12.
Right.
It's like, oh.
Well, and sometimes it takes you so long to find what you're looking for that you forgot why you were looking for it in the first place.
Yeah. Also, I think the way they've done it might feed into the whole how do I want to put it? Like 5-hour game session prep.
Right.
I need to have everything in front of me on a thing where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and that inevitably tends to lead people down railroad tracks. Like
Exactly.
I said, the Disney adventure, going off, and yeah.
Like I said, when I was running 5e for the game shop, and what I referred to as the Disneyland ride campaigns, everybody makes it a character to get a ticket to get on the Tiamat roller coaster or the Tomb of Annihilation roller coaster, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Most of those are designed and were written in such a way that, and this, I really honestly believe that Milestone XP is part of this, is that, it is a railroad. You're going to go from, this happens in chapter 1, which then leads into chapter 2, then leads into chapter 3. Very rarely were you going to have any kind of random encounter table.
Mm-hmm.
And in designing Braunhaven for Old School Essentials, that overland travel and the chance of random encounters, that can account for as much as 20% of a character's XP.
Mm-hmm.
Because they get the XP whether they kill the monster or skirt around it or stealth their way through or come up with some witty and devious conversation that will get them past it. That still counts for their XP.
Yeah.
The other huge chunk of XP, of course, being 1 XP per gold piece, which is, I still do it that way in Castles and Crusades. That is, that's probably a good 2/3 of their XP right there.
Oh, easily.
So it was a change in paradigm of going back to the old ways of doing things.
Yeah, I do think that is the overall better way. And not because, the first way of doing anything is the greatest way and the only way you should ever do things. No, it's because it works. It just happens to work. People are free to try and experiment to see what works. If someone comes up with something that's better, I'll play with it. I'll use it. I don't mind.
I
this
see
currently
some value.
Seems to be the best way, in my opinion, so far.
I mean, I see some value in both. I tend to not railroad my characters or my players. However, there is an overall plot to this. And some of the discussions that I've seen online are fairly ridiculous, where they will, and this, you find this especially among the Braunstein OSR crowd, where they put the onus of a plot or developing a plot actually on the player characters. So they'll do a random encounter, and it'll come up with something, and the players will engage and then hopefully defeat said encounter. And then whatever the players come up with as to why this thing was there, then somehow becomes this thin plot of what they're doing. And there's going to be a reason that the characters go adventuring in the first place, or the reason that they are basically what led them to go down the road to have that encounter in the first place.
Yeah.
So I have a plot, and but then beyond that, with random encounters, that can lead in 100 different directions depending on how they deal with it. And so I do a little of this and a little of that.
Yeah, when you look at you're creating a setting, but you also have lots of adventures. Adventures, by their definition, they have an overarching plot, and it might be how you go about things and how you do things in the end. That's the sort in between. But then, like, if the big bad gets killed or gets imprisoned or whatever case might be, you're going to have like a sort of storytelling of what happened or if they got away. That's just because it can't just be like then something on to the next something. There has to be something going on to sort of like finish it. If you finish it, it has to be like a lid closing that on top of that or something.
Right. Well, and you run into that with the 5th edition players, in that, and I've seen this so many times. We're only 3 sessions into my big campaign, and the player characters have already killed the big bad. What do I do? And my advice usually to that is, you can do whatever you want to do. Maybe there's another big bad that this guy was only a lieutenant. That's an obvious one, right? The other solution to that would be like, there's resurrection exists in a fantasy world. So there's that. But my advice to them, you should learn from that lesson. And the lesson that I learned, and this was way back in the early 80s, is that if it has a stat block, it can be killed. And so you want to be very careful about giving your gods a stat block, because that means that your player characters can engage with them. And there's a possibility, no matter how small, that they might win. So then that god is no longer exists, right?
Yeah.
The same is true for your big bad. If you have given him a stat block and placed him improperly in your world, then yes, you run that risk that the players are going to completely derail your overall plot by killing the mob boss before it's time.
Yeah.
So,
like if you look at like mega dungeons, there's almost always like a big bad in the middle or towards the end of the work. If you like them or not, I love mega dungeons. I think they're just fun because I like dungeon in general. I also love hex. I love hex crawling as well. So I love hex crawling and going to a big ass dungeon.
Right.
I'm a simple man.
Yes, keep it simple.
But like, but like if you're like you said, if you placed that big bad on level 2 and he didn't have efficient stats, like he didn't have high enough AC or enough hit points or hit dice, whatever way you're doing it, whatever system it is, and they die on the 3rd level instead of the 10th level, you didn't either A, the characters are overpowered, B, you didn't do everything right at all, and he's like one fifth or more less powerful than he should be.
Right.
Like he's only like one fifth of the power he should be, or whatever. Or there's just you're playing. I don't know. That they're really only real two things I can think of. I was gonna say you're playing the wrong system, but even if you're playing the wrong system, you still have to have the correct stats. Whatever.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, and it's funny that you bring up the wrong system. So you run into this probably about once every 6 or 7 months. If you troll through the many different RPG discussions across social media, you'll run into this probably about, like I said, every 6-7 months. And the conversation, of course, comes around to, I really wish that somebody would create a system agnostic setting. And I toyed with that idea, but it's something that sounds better on paper than it usually is in reality. And if you notice the separation, there seems to be a at least to me, I don't know if anybody else has seen this, but it's, if you take Braunhaven, the first campaign, the first edition stuff that was strictly written for OSC versus what I'm writing now, which is focused on Castles and Crusades, there is a distinct difference in the overall color of the world. So first edition with OSC, because it was very much tied to that old school flavor of basic and expert edition box sets. Reality is it's very mudcore. I mean, if your characters live past 3rd level, you're lucky. And the downside of doing a mega dungeon in that game system is that in a lot of cases, it does end up to be, whether you intend to do it or not, it ends up to be a funnel. The first the first two adventures, the thing in the basement and the light in the church, were not actually intended originally to be a mega dungeon. And it was like, the more that I wrote, the bigger this dungeon kept getting. It was just growing of its own accord. And it did. It ended up being a funnel. In the test group, a lot of the characters died. And I made some minor changes, thinking that it was going to solve the problem, and then the first actual play group that I did on my YouTube channel, I think in the first 3 weeks we killed off like 5 characters, and most of them died from traps. Because if you know anything about OSC, low level rogues, or rather low level thieves, have a hard time. Like, they have very low chance of actually picking a lock. They have very hard time finding traps. And yeah, that dungeon was painted with dwarves and elves and wizards. And so it kind of, that system, I look at a rule system as being the laws of physics for the world that you're building. And the laws of physics from OSC tend to be very bleak and dismal. And I mean, that's not to say that that's a bad thing, but after a while, I was just like, man, this is this is depressing. Everything you guys are going to do, it's going to kill them, and it does. It just gets depressing. And even if you do it in a high fantasy way, that high fantasy magic could go awry and kill them. I mean, everything wants to kill the characters. And so with the second edition, using Castles and Crusades, I mean, yeah, there's some seriously deadly stuff in there, but I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it seems that it has imbued the world with a vibrant tone. Like,
I know what it is.
Do you? I can't put my finger on it.
I think what it is the world itself becomes naturally more heroic.
Yes. Yes.
It just imbues. So I don't know why it just does. Things just pop out more. And even when you read the books, you can feel it and you can see it, and it's weird. I don't know how. It's just an innate sense of things, and it's like it's you know what it is? It's like the implied setting. You have an implied feeling from how things are and how they naturally end up translating. And
Right.
what's happening is you're having that feeling, and then it's translated into your world.
Right.
That's probably what it is. That's what I'm thinking, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, and if you OSC having taken pretty much they lifted their entire rule set from those two box sets,
Oh yeah,
and a brief smattering of first edition
that's
AD&D.
yeah,
Um,
like your paladin.
that implied setting, I believe it was called Mystara, and then
Mhm.
there was also Greyhawk. Those were the implied settings for those box sets and first edition
Yeah,
AD&D, and it was very bleak. I mean, your character, especially at first level, was really not that much better than the peasant that was out, tilling his farm, and of course the peasant was scared of goblins. The goblins had 3 more hit points than the peasant did. And
yeah,
so, your first level character should be wary, because that goblin, like it or not, could kill you very easily, just as easily as he can kill the peasant. Castles and Crusades, it's not quite that bad. I mean, it might take 3 goblins to kill you, but you have a little bit more of a heroic chance.
yeah. There's different, like, again, neither way is necessarily bad or good. It kind of depends on what you're looking for out of your game as well. Like,
Agreed.
I think there's different games for different settings and even different moods. If I'm in like I want a quick game, I'm not gonna break out AD&D.
Right.
I'm not gonna. Oh,
No,
this is
that's
a
going
nice
to take a
light
while.
game.
Yeah, you got to
I'm
read
not
through
gonna do
the
that.
AD&D books and let your
Yeah,
brain
yeah.
chew on it a bit.
If I was going to do that, I'd just take out like a light game. I take out shadowdark or one of the Morkborks or clones or whatever, the Parborg or something else.
Right.
And I'm not play that for like 2 hours or whatever and chill. But if I want more gritty detail, I will go to ADD.
Exactly.
For example, you're going to get more minute stuff, and of course you can. Oh no, you're going to kill me for this. You can pick and choose exactly what rules you want to use and when you want to use them.
No, that
Let's put it this way: most people do
Yeah.
not use the weapon to armor chart. There's a reason for it.
Right. Yeah, or weapon speed. Yeah. Weapon speed's another one that got.
Yeah.
I mean, even Gary Gygax said that he didn't use weapon speed. It's like,
Yeah.
why did you put it in there? I mean, all right, whatever.
But like Castles and Crusades, yeah, I think the best way I think I can think of describing it is you have Aragorn and the Hobbits. You have that feel in the world. That's what I feel when I look at the book and I've played it. Is you have that. It's heroic, but it's not so over the top where you're a superhero.
Right.
It's still believable in like as far as something like that can be believable. My missiles and stuff coming out everywhere.
Right. Yes. Well,
but it's not to the point of where you look at something the wrong way and you get stabbed and killed.
Sure. Right. And that was another. I mean, in addition to everything that went on, come what end of 2021, beginning of 2022, you had the OGL scandal. You had Wizards of the Coast sending Pinkertons to a guy's house because they Wizards of the Coast shipped him the wrong cards.
Yeah.
And then they sent Pinkertons to his house to not only harass his neighbors but his wife and him. And I was done with Wizards. And but aside from that, I mean, that of course was the line in my line in the sand of switching over to Castles and Crusades. But really the feel of 5e is just way overpowered. Like your character at first level is on a whole other plane of existence than the normal people that live in that world.
Yeah.
And it only gets worse. I mean, and then they're going to level up, and you only really have to worry about a character dying probably between levels 1 and 2. After that, it's really negligible, and after level 5, it's nigh impossible. I mean, you would have to be severely unlucky with their system to have a character die after 5th level. Like, we tried.
Yeah.
We tried. And nope.
It's a superhero game with a fantasy cult.
Yes.
That's what
Yes,
it
it
is. I
is.
think that's the way I described it. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you're looking for.
Right.
But if you're looking to play just a straight fantasy game, I don't think that's the way to go. And I think there's a reason why people's campaigns stop after 6, 8 sessions.
Well, yeah, it just starts to get ridiculous.
I think that's what they said is the average, 8 sessions or something like that.
Yeah,
Which is
the reason why they have very few, to my knowledge, there's only one that has been published so far. They don't have any adventures that really go much past level 10 to 12.
Mhm.
And the reason is that they found that that's when most campaigns end, and then they go and they make new characters.
Yeah.
And we ran what was it, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which goes all the way to 20. And if you do so there's 2 books. There was the Waterdeep book, and then there was Dungeon of the Mad Mage. And it goes from 1 to 20. By the time that you get to level 12 or 13, it starts to become very difficult, because from the dungeon master side, you're looking through the monster manual. There's nothing with a challenge. Well, first of all, challenge ratings are useless. They don't work. And second of all, even if you were going by the challenge rating, there's only a handful of monsters that you can throw at the characters, right? I mean, after level 12, I mean, you're pretty much delegated to elder dragons. That's maybe a Tarrasque. I mean, there's nothing in there that is so high a level that it's going to touch these guys, and they're going to go all the way to level 20. And so that was an uphill battle. I mean, that was a trudge trying to really work with the monsters that you had on hand in order to get that to be a heroic adventure.
Yeah.
And so I see where their problem is, but unfortunately it was a problem of their own making. They completely broke the challenge, and why they went away from the hit dice as being the level of the monster, I will never understand. I don't know what prompted them to make that change. The challenge rating system has never been fantastic. I will say it worked better in 3 and 3.5 edition, but in 5th edition, it is just useless. It is, you have to know that monster to even determine whether or not their CR is going to be relevant.
Yeah, I personally like hit dice better, mainly because even games like I like shadowdark a lot, and for example, but they just use hit points. I'd rather hit dice because A, I can roll them, or B, I just get maximum hit points.
Right. Well, and that's always, I mean, you don't necessarily even have to level up the monster. You can just say, well, rather than give them the average hit points, I'll just max it out.
Yeah.
And that just gives
them eight hit points instead of 5.
Right. And that basically gives that monster, 50% more chance to swing again, No, I completely on board. I don't know why they made it so complicated.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's a problem of their own manufacture.
Yeah. Well, so when you were creating Braunhaven, like you said, it started off one way, then you kind of shelved it for a little bit, and you end up coming back to it. So after you started using OSE, yeah. So what was so you created the town sort of village area, and then you expanded it in the world, and you come across the mines and stuff like that in the game, which are really cool. Because again, I think what you've done is you create settings for an area to expand upon. It has adventures to go alongside it as well. is this, like we said, talked about earlier, that was directly influenced from how you experienced playing D&D as a kid,
Yeah, exactly.
stitching things together to expand the world slowly over time.
Right.
So when it comes to that, how do you decide which direction to go? So do we go south, north, east of the world direction? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
Well, and so it's funny that you asked that, because there is in the first edition, so that's essentially one long campaign, which essentially, like the old modules, the AD&D or even basic modules, you'd start at B1 or B0, and it would go to B10, and each one adds a bit. There comes a point in there where, so I don't want to give away the plot for people that are playing, but essentially there are two keys that have to be found, or not necessarily have to be found, but the characters have been given enough of a reason to become curious about these keys.
Yep.
And so once they have these two keys, they have the opportunity to unlock the portal. And so having done that, gives them the further further knowledge of what's really going on overall. So now they are aware that there is this big bad, that everything that they're seeing with their eyes, they can no longer be gaslit. They know what's going on. At that point, they can essentially go in two different directions. Well, essentially, they could go three different directions, although one direction would be sure death at that level, right? And they're probably smart enough to realize that. So they have the choice. They have to go find three relics, and one is in the Sylvanas Forest, safeguarded by the elves. The other is a myth, legend, way off in the frozen north in the realm of Stagina. And then the last being, of course, in dead center in the middle of the capital city of the empire. And so they have a choice. In both my test groups, and my actual campaign that I ran, both of them went in order. They're like, okay, first we'll go to Gina, then we'll come back and we'll go to the Sylvanas Forest, and then we'll go to Glassshine. But that's not necessarily a requirement. They can go completely out of order if they wanted to. If they want to attempt it, they can of course go to Glassshine and try to get the sword if they want. But it would seem a little illogical to do that, considering that that's probably going to be their end game anyways, right? So yeah, I mean, making a decision on which direction to go, I don't know that there was really a conscious decision. I just chose a direction and said, well, this looks good for now. And the other issue that I ran up with was that, and I don't have that problem presently. So my current campaign group only plays once a month. But before, I had the once a month group, and then I had a weekly game that I was doing. And doing that weekly game, if you're the one generating all the content, there's a lot of pressure. You got to feed the beast. And so you are constantly pressured to put out more and more and more content. The unfortunate side of that is, and I will be the first to say this, is that the quality of the first edition books was not where they are now, because there was this constant impetus to generate as fast as possible to get it out there. And so now with the second edition stuff, now I don't have that pressure of the weekly game on me, that I can actually spend time making sure that the quality is all where I want it and where it should be for the consumer. But Yeah, as far as the direction goes, I that's a really good question. I don't have an answer for it. I
No,
just
that's,
I
that's
flipped a
fine.
coin and we're going into the mountains.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's a perfectly reasonable answer, really, because you're like, oh, well, I know. Obviously, I've been doing a channel, so I end up getting to know a lot of creators, and I made a few friends with a couple of them. You know, really cool people like yourself. This is our first time talking, and we talked for like 20 minutes or so beforehand. Uh,
Right.
I think just from talking, you're. I'm gonna say a word we use here. Sounds. You're super sound, so which means you're good. You're cool. You know, yeah. But like when it comes to creation, it's weird because almost every single one of them I know is like, oh, I just feel like this is like the thing. I don't know why. It's just
Right.
drawn there for whatever reason. And it's a subconscious thing, I think. It's probably just like, oh,
Well,
I
and
want to know what's there myself as well.
I think that one of the reasons that so when you get that information and you well, I guess this happened earlier than that. When they are going for that second key, it takes place in the Lost Mines of Drothamstone. And at that point, that of course led me to, well, now I have to detail the mountains. And that was harder than you think because you know, if you think about it, it's like, well, they're mountains. I mean, what is there really to say? It's a mountain. You know what is there to say? Part of it's covered in trees. It probably has snow at the higher elevations. I mean, and so that was a little bit difficult. But what I knew about the mountains and the Lost Mine and a lot of the other mines that you find throughout the Skelos Mountains is that the dwarves, of course, play a huge part. And
Yeah,
I wanted to make sure that I got that the dwarves of Braunhaven, or at least the dwarves of the Glossian Empire in Braunhaven. I wanted to make sure I got right. My wife actually has a history of playing dwarven characters. Her very first character was Gerda Battlehammer, a dwarven
based.
paladin, and so and her current character is Brandy, who is a dwarven fighter, and so she has, you know, she has some, whether she wants to admit or not, she has some knowledgeable background on what makes a dwarf, how they operate, what a clan looks like, and how they view the world. And so in Braunhaven, dwarves have a very low birth rate, and there is this um, priority put on dwarves to marry and try to create a family, and really whether you're successful at that or not, to then found your own mine and your own possibly stronghold, drawing other dwarves that may have the same infertility problem that you have to your banner, and creating a new clan. And so
Mhm. Okay.
there's this overriding stress on, they are long lived, but they are in decline because of their
Mhm.
low fertility rate, um, which is more or less the opposite of the elves. They have an entirely other set of problems. But the real takeaway, if you look at the everything, and it's not explicitly stated, but if you look at the entire campaign setting, the real takeaway from it is that, much like and I'm not comparing myself. I'm not going to compare myself to Tolkien, but much like Middle Earth at the time of the War of the Ring, those other races are in decline,
Mhm.
and you can take um, a logical leap and say there will be a time where there won't be any more dwarves, or there won't be any more elves, and that, you know, or the elves may get into a civil war and kill each other all off. There, these are realities of the Braunhaven campaign setting. In addition to that, though, you also have a temporal stagnation. So and it dawned on me, and I found this very interesting. The amount of time that we as human beings have used the spear and the sword is vastly longer than the amount of time that we as human beings have used firearms or
Oh
guns.
yeah.
And so in Braunhaven, you have, there is firearm black powder weapon technology in the form of matchlocks, and it's not really progressing anywhere. It will be matchlocks for a long time, probably for as long as any person in the world can think of.
Mhm.
It will remain that way, and there's this temporal stasis, I guess, that kind of
Mhm.
holds the world at that tech level. That doesn't mean that somebody might not come up with a wheel lock system or even a flintlock, but for the most part, the world as a whole is going to stay. And I think that is because of the prevalence of magic. Because when you've got a guy that can throw a fireball from his palm,
Yeah.
a black powder pistol doesn't seem that fantastic.
Yeah, it seems not as impressive.
Right. So
Yeah.
the whole world has that stagnation set to it. So, but the underlying current is that, well, the dwarves, they have low fertility, so they might live 140 years, but um, they're on their way out. You know.
Mhm. I do like the way you described it is about the dwarfs there. It's a different take as well, which is interesting. I really like that. But also it's the reason why they form clans and come together is interesting. They're not all just related and they're not just serve fealty to one king or rule for whatever reason. It is other people who are having issues and they're like, okay, I know a guy over here. We can
Right.
come together and then try and build ourselves, defend ourselves from outsiders, whatever the case.
Well,
Yeah.
and from a historical viewpoint, you saw that a lot with like Scottish and Irish clans.
Mhm.
If you look at, uh, and this is going to make a lot of people in the UK angry because I've already seen these posts.
Do it.
My family line, I have traced back to quite a ways, and um, my family line actually, Clan Wilson was kind of not really well known. They were a part of Clan Gun at the time that they sided with William the Conqueror for the Battle of Hastings. And there's like paperwork. Oh, you were gifted. They went into really bizarre detail. Like you were gifted this keep and so many acres of land that has 3 sheep, 2 chickens, a cow, and they listed all of this out, probably for tax purposes, right? But like literally for tax purposes. But I historically, just because you were a member in this case of like Clan Gun, that doesn't mean your last name was Gun.
Yeah.
You could be a Wilson or a
Yeah, you sure
Fabergé.
fealty to clan going.
Right.
Yeah.
And so some of these smaller clans were kind of absorbed into the larger ones, and I kind of
Mhm.
went that direction with the dwarves as well.
That's a cool way to do things for sure. It's definitely different from the way a lot of people have done it. When you look at games and settings, usually dwarfs are just the way they have been. They're just dwarfs. Everyone
Right.
knows what a dwarf is. It's that sort of thing. But it's definitely
Right.
nice to have a bit of a mix on it. So you can still have an idea what dwarfs are like, but there's this added flavor and detail as to why each
Right.
like the way they are, which then is just adding more to your own setting, which is called, of course, what you want.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Um, th-
'Cause- okay.
I kind of did the same thing with the elves.
Mhm.
Most settings, you know, the high elves are the ones that are the, I guess, arbiter on all things elven, right? They are, but in Braunhaven, it's not the high elves. The high elves generally are being accused of trying to be um, more like the mortals, more like the humans. And what caused the high elves and the wood elves to split is that the wood elves are highly conservative. They want to, you know, maintain all the things that makes elven culture elven. They want to
Mhm.
maintain their own, and in Braunhaven, the wood elves themselves, they have very few permanent settlements. for the most part, they are a nomadic group, moving from forest to wood, throughout the world, and they have a few minor villages that are open for trade. But the high elves are really integrated with the rest of the world. They have shipping concerns and businesses. They have their own silver mines. Some of their ships sail clear across the Dragon Sea and have business interests in the Orentian Empire, for example. And of course the wood elves are like, no, you're just trying to make yourself more human. You're foregoing your elvish nature by doing this, and there's this big schism with the elves. So yeah, I went different directions a bit with some of the demi-humans.
That's cool, because like it's sort of like a bunch the elves became a bunch of city folk.
Right, yeah.
Like forgetting how to make fire with sticks.
Right.
And how to survive and how to trap and how to live in the wilds, and track and build their homesteads and stuff like that. But instead they're in making money doing shipping routes or whatever.
Right. Yeah, they have their businesses. Their capital city is rife with guilds, because everything's going to have a guild, right? The Guild of Fishing and Shipping, or Fishing and Shipping is a guild. There's there's one that is a completely useless guild, is the Guild of Entertainers, which is useless because elves are already kind of artists and entertainers anyways. They love good song, and so really what that guild ends up being is that anybody's admitted, and they're really just more of a party house, like a frat house sitting in the middle of this elven city. But yeah, the elves have a lot of problems, at least in the Glaucian Empire, which so their capital city of Derzwadalek, you can count that as it is kind of the center of where elves came into the world, because the Fey realm is actually physically touching the Sylvanas Forest. And if you look at it in a planar aspect, it's just kind of wisping apart. And so there are these portals that open up in the Sylvanas Forest. And if you're not careful and you're walking through the Sylvanas Forest, you might accidentally step through one, find yourself in the Fey realm for however many hours trying to figure out where you're at before you accidentally step through the portal again. And if you are a masochist, sadist game master, you're going to have them step through a portal that could be miles away from where the rest of the party is. So your party might get split off, in random directions. And so I haven't been that cruel, because they got enough problems. But yeah,
that should be a trap roll.
Right. Yeah, it could be. Yes.
Yeah. You roll the one of that 6, boys.
Well, the other thing, if you don't have an elf or a fey creature or a fey humanoid in your party, so you could have a leprechaun, you could have an elf, a pixie. If they're in your party, you don't have this problem. Mortals, when you're in the Sylvanas Forest, because of how the Fey realm is kind of it rammed into it and then moved away, so it's tearing apart in slow motion. And not only are these portals generated, but the forest itself will morph and change. And so if you are just a mortal walking through the forest on a forest path, you might turn around and look behind you to find that the path is completely gone and there's just nothing but a wall of trees next to you. And so if you have a fey creature, they can navigate it. But the party, if you don't have an elf or a leprechaun in there, you're going to get lost sooner or later.
That's good. I like that. So there's a bit of that Fangone Forest sort of thing going on. Things move and change and creep around a little bit.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I like that. I love things like that. It's fun. Guys, if you can't tell the amount of enthusiasm that Christopher has, it's palpable in everything. It's not he's clearly loves what he's creating, what he's put out there, which I think is absolutely brilliant and it's infectious. But you did say a few times earlier that you change things over more towards Castle Crusade. You're still putting things out for OSE, but your main focus is for CNC. And maybe what are some of the reasons for that? Is it just that you just enjoy CNC more, or whatever?
Well, there is that. Yeah, I really love Castles and Crusades. Everything about that game. I find it to be just fantastic.
Yeah, I think
it does. So, going back to what I said about disliking 5e and its superhero characters, that is not to say that I don't find that there were good parts of 5e. There were some good things in there. What I have found is that all of those good parts can be found in Castles and Crusades. And a lot of it is found in the Castle Keeper's Guide, which, in my opinion, next to the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide, is probably the best DMG I've ever read through. Everything in there is actually usable. Like it goes into enough depth. Sometimes it goes into too much depth. Like it'll go into like, well, what population counts as a town versus a village, or and they give exact numbers. Like, well, it's about this many thousand people, and now instead of a village, now it's a town. But most of that stuff can be found in there. A good example, feats. So Castles and Crusades, out of the player's handbook, they're just raw characters. You want to add feats, they're found in the Castle Keeper's Guide. They're called advantages. There are background skills that can be added to characters or not background skills. Sorry, that's my book that I'm writing. Secondary skills that can be randomly rolled for or selected, that give the characters some kind of knowledge of what it is that they did before they became an adventurer. All of this stuff is available in there, even down to the point of, like, in 5th edition, you had the ever-present inspiration points that the DM could occasionally reward players with. Well, that's in there too. They've got rules for 3 different types. They've got fate points, luck points, and hero points. I've kind of gone with the hero points idea, and you could spend a hero point to re-roll a bad roll. You could spend a hero point to give yourself a +1 bonus to whatever it is, and you can spend more than one. If your character, one example is like, if your character gets injured, because they use the negative hit point system. So at -10, that's it, you're dead. If you get hit so hard that you are down to -10 hit points, you can spend 3 hero points and you will be only down to -9 and stabilized. And so all of that's in there. And so, yes, I really love Castles and Crusades. That's not to say that I think that Old School Essentials is bad. I think Old School Essentials is absolutely a fantastic system. It's very simple. Gavin Norman should be given an award for his layout abilities. The books are laid out absolutely fantastic. You don't need really an index, but I'm thankful that the index is there, because if I want to look up a specific magic item, bam, it's right there. Or one specific monster, bam, it's right there. But their layout is fantastic. Where I ran into, and I was running advanced, Old School Essentials Advanced Fantasy, which I guess now is going
standard.
to be the standard. Yeah.
It's going to be the new standard, I think. Yeah, because I think what happened, it doesn't matter, but I think that's what's going to be this new standard, because more people are using it and then they were just printing books and stick around. I think that was
I don't know why you would choose basic over advanced, having
especially
done what I've done.
The same, and has the same rules in.
Right. And so what I ran into, though, and I ran into this problem way back when I was a kid too. You have basic and you've got expert, and you might have, at that time, because I was a kid, I didn't have a job. And so, you might have a advanced Dungeons and Dragons book, right? So you're going through it, and you eventually come to a point where you need you just need more stuff, and you need more rules. And
Yeah.
so and you probably will notice this in the first edition Braunhaven setting, is that there were some like wilderness survival stuff which came out of the wilderness. What is the wilderness survival guide, and then there was like the Dungeoneer's survival guide. Both of those books, I added in, and I tweaked them so that they would fit with Old School Essentials Advanced. Um, I did the entire book, a treatise of magic and spells, because there was a lot of stuff missing, as far as like spells and rituals and magic items, that I wanted in the game, and so I had to write a book for it. A lot of that, and you ran into that. Oh, another one. So the finale adventure has rules that go into what it looks like when you have to rule a kingdom, or when you're the one who's in charge, and what goes into that. Well, how much does it cost to host the Duke down the road to come to your jousting list? Well, if he's more important, that might cost you a bit more gold, but it might also influence this nobleman over here that you really want to show up at your list so that you can get an audience. So those rules, which came from the Companions box set, I added those in. So I ran into scenarios that, as the campaign grew, you needed more and more rules, which I honestly believe is the reason that there were more box sets. There's a reason why there were more AD&D books, right? Because
Yeah, they're
we
playing, and we're like, wait, we need a rule for this. If
right,
people are going to come across, it's like, okay, we'll create it and we'll add it into this here.
right, and so I ran into that scenario, and so when I first started the campaign set, and when I first started Braunhaven, the question, it really came down to, am I going to do this in Old School Essentials Advanced, or am I going to do it in Castles and Crusades? And at the time, Old School Essentials won out. And there, even from the very beginning, there was always a plan that at some point in the future, that once I've established this world, that I'd be moving over to Castles and Crusades, and because then I would have a solid footing and I can move forward. And so it has nothing to do with not liking or not liking Old School Essentials or anything like that. It's a fantastic system. And like you were saying, if I wanted to, if I just wanted to do a one-off session and an afternoon game with some people that had never played before, I would probably choose Old School Essentials Advanced, because you can teach somebody to play that game in like 5 minutes. It is super fast and easy to play. But having moved forward, I got to looking at Castles and Crusades towards the latter end of the first campaign session, and what I found was all this stuff that I had to be adding into Old School Essentials Advanced Fantasy, Castles and Crusades already had. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot less work. that's kind of nice.
Yeah,
And so I just decided at that point that CNC was going to be my main focus initially. And I will admit that I'm moving forward. I was like, I'm done with having to write Old School Essentials, but the customer's always correct. They kept buying Old School Essentials stuff, and so I was like, well, there's obviously a demand in the OSC crowd, and so I have now decided moving forward that, I then made the decision that all of the adventures moving forward will be released in both Castles and Crusades and Old School Essentials. And in order to keep, so obviously because of how stat blocks are done and formatting and things like that, the two books come out slightly different. And so in order to keep all of that, I'm actually writing both versions of the book at the same time. So I'll basically write it all for CNC, copy it, paste it into a new document, and then tweak it and then move forward. That way my formatting's not hopefully all over the place.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't learn to do that until the last book came out, which was The Sunken Fortress of Varkuth. So I apologize to everybody. The old school essentials versions of Werewolves of London and Town on the Edge of Shadow, I apologize for the formatting. It is ugly, and it won't be happening again to books moving forward now that I know what I'm doing. But it is what it is, I guess.
Trial and error. You can't have everything perfect all the time. Like
No.
mess ups will happen, and like especially when you're trying to multitask and try and do multiple things at the same time to keep things in order. I think things happen. It's not the end of the world. You're
Right.
one guy trying to put stuff out there for people to enjoy and play with. It's not like you're a massive company and you're putting it. That's different. That is different.
Yeah.
People aren't gonna put you head first into a bloody flame.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I was looking over the second edition players guide there last night as well, just to refresh myself, and it is brilliant. And like you said, you'll see a lot of references to instead of having to write rules or take rules from my other systems, like you said, it's like, this is in Castle Crusades,
right?
treasure book, or in this book here.
Saves so much time to be able to reference somebody else's book.
You're someone who's playing Castle Crusades a lot. You know exactly what it is. Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, I know that. I already know it on top of my head. Or I turned that page, chart, whatever it is. Done.
Right.
Yeah. Simple.
Well, and teaching new players at the table. Yeah. Let's face reality. 99% of the time, if you have somebody new coming to your table, they'll have played 5e before. And so the nice thing about Castles and Crusades, like, you played 5e, then you already know how to play Castles and Crusades. It's essentially, when you boil it all down to the core of it, it's the same game.
In my experience with people who played 5e and they go into other systems, they need to pull back a bit and think a bit more. Right. Because they're so used to charging in, like, I slaughter everything. And it's like, okay, cool. They were actually good guys. But here's a great
example. The Barbarian class. So the Barbarian from 5th edition, they can rage. And I've always had a problem with that because there are cursed weapons, axes usually, that impose a penalty of rage. And the problem with the Barbarian's rage is, so in 5th edition, I believe it ends if there's nobody else for you to attack. But never once does it force you to attack your own party members. You have control of that rage, which is antithetical to what a rage is. If you are in a rage, you have lost control.
Yeah, and that says more like focus.
Right. And so I always felt like, why is the Barbarians major class feature being able to curse themselves with a rage? It makes more sense in other game systems, including OSC and CNC. The Barbarian doesn't have a rage, but they have similar abilities in other aspects. So I don't know. Your 8 hit point level 1 Barbarian that decides to rage and go wade into a large battle in 5e just simply isn't going to work in anything else because they're going to take all that damage. They're probably not going to survive that. But yeah, that's you got to stop and think about what you're doing in other systems and
check
what's around
traps,
you.
As you're moving around. Yes. That's the one that always gets them. I'm sorry, that always gets in traps.
Well,
like, I run ahead, it's like dead.
Yeah, that first group, the first actual play session of Braunhaven, all of those guys were pretty new. They had played 5th edition for years. And like I said, in the first week, we probably killed off a good 5 characters easily. Or the first 3 weeks, we killed off 5 characters. And almost always it was because of traps. They would either not pay attention and I had some fairly nasty. If you ever played Dungeons and Dragons online, there's a trap in there that I always love, and they're everywhere. And we used to refer to it as the rusty salad shooter because it just looks like a blade that comes up and it unfolds and starts spinning, and it basically just turns a hallway into a blender. And man, I think with that particular hallway, I ended up killing off two characters at once because they both failed, and one of them was standing right on the blade. So you know, um, in any fantasy game, well, I guess in any game whatsoever, even more lethal than the opponents or the weapons that the opponents are carrying, or even more deadly than a spell, are the traps. Inevitably, they're like 50% more lethal than anything else in the game. And that
Environmental stuff will always get people.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think that's what makes games interesting. Is you're going to a room, there's nothing in the room. But is there really nothing in the room?
Is there ever nothing in the room?
Sometimes there really is nothing in the rooms, except my
occasionally. If I as a and this is a warning to everybody that ever plays with me. If I have you go into like 3 rooms in a row and there's nothing in there, you better be careful about that 4th or 5th room because there's going to be now you've let your guard down. Oh, it's just another room with nothing in. Yeah, that's where I'm going to get you. Sometimes I'll wait.
They start running back out, and then they activate all the traps they missed.
Right? Yes. Exactly. Right.
Yeah, stuff like that is I think that's fun. But I think it's good when they have new people like set for 5e, whatever, come to any game system, and then once they see what happens, they're like, "Oh, I get why people like this now. It requires me to use more than 2 brain cells."
Right.
And I'm not saying that's my sound kind of harsh. I guess it kind of is. I'm being a bit mean. I am. I'm sorry, but like, no, you need to think. You cannot rush into things. If you do rush, you might get lucky, but you're probably not. If you have a referee who is being nice because you're new, I don't like that. I think if they activate a trap because their character be split in half, they should be split in half. Doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. I roll in the open.
That's how you learn.
Live and die by the dice.
I roll in the open. Game system. It's how you learn how to do things. I know some people don't like this, but mapping I think is great to do. It teaches people.
It's very difficult though.
It can be a pain in the ass. But when it comes to mapping, when I have people map, I'm not super strict about it. I'm like, you can just draw a box that's going to be representative of the room, and you know where the doors are. You don't need to know the exact dimensions, because if you're in real life, if you know, okay, I have a box.
You're not walking around with a tape measure.
2 doors. I'm not measuring the amount of distances. I'm like, oh, here's a door. If I'm in this room and I know it's connected to this, that's fine. You can literally do boxes and lines. I'm cool with that. But if you don't do anything and you don't remember which way you came, that's your own fault.
That's your fault, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think, like you've talked about your setting and the games and the adventures, you definitely have this enthusiasm, which is very infectious, if I do say so. But if people want to check out your stuff, like I said, I'll leave a link for your Drive to RPG as well as your YouTube, so you can check out the videos and sort of figure what things are. As well as that, when it comes to the 2nd edition stuff, that's a big book.
Yes,
it's nearly 300 pages.
Yes, and so when I decided to go with CNC, at that point I feel like I had accomplished what I originally set out to do of generating the footprint for or the basis for this world, by adding one module at a time. And so with the 2nd edition, I decided that I was going to jump ahead, and I was going to I wanted essentially our lore Bible, so that if anybody at the table had a question, I could just be like, here you go, thump, lay that 300-page book down on the table and go, you can find it in here. And so that's what kind of created the player's guide. It has oodles of information. I mean, some of the information that's in there, I can honestly believe that the player characters may never encounter. Like, for instance, if you go all the way over to Erebachia, there's a whole lot of political machinations going on between the different caliphates and the cities. And so, what I forget off the top of my head which one it is. One caliphate's daughter is they're kind of negotiating with uh, the leader of another caliphate of marrying her to them, and he it is suspected that he actually offed his wife. He's a widower, and she died under some strange circumstances,
Hmm.
mostly because she had the keys to the chest, as it were, through her family, and he did not, and so she just conveniently was offed. And so, but he also has access to a lot of the guilds and shipping magnates. And so now they're talking about this marriage. And of course, this other Shah's wife is, completely beside herself that you would marry off my daughter, blah, 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 to him of all people. And so there's all this political stuff going on in the background that the characters may not actually interact with, but in telling the description of the world and the realm, I have to include that
Yeah,
information because without it, uh, certain things don't make sense.
yeah.
And like I saw, I saw a review of Light in the Church that was done several years ago, or a couple of years ago at least, and somebody said, "Oh, well, he goes into way too much detail about the background of Father Fellister Ainsworth, who is the druid that runs the temple." Like, can you can you give too much background information on an NPC? I mean, yes, you're probably only going to encounter him so that you can receive healing, or because he's going to give you a quest. But from the game master's point of view, don't you want that background information to know why he exists the way he does? I mean, I can't imagine why there would be a reason for having too much information, but
Yeah, and when it comes to that sort of stuff, it's good for the referee to understand who an NPC is, even if they're only going to do a small amount of stuff like
right,
in the game. But there's a reason why they're doing the things they're doing,
right,
and you may have a player or a group of players who want to interact with that character more.
right,
And they might spend instead of spending like 2 minutes getting healing, maybe they're gonna want to talk to him and find out information about something he knows or trying to get information from him. He's a priest. Maybe he knows about expelling demons or something if they come across something.
right.
Because and again, it's like you said with the political stuff, there's going to be an element of people who will want to know and engage in that level of detail. Like there's a reason why like games like Axe are out there because there's
Right.
a certain percentage of people who want to get in the nitty gritty on everything. Like I know people who like play OSC, they think it's great, but when they're lacking rules, Axe comes out.
Right.
They just use that. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like back in
And
the
it's a
day.
drop-in fit. Yeah.
Yeah. If it works, it works. It doesn't matter where it's from.
Right.
Um,
Or
like you
Osric
said,
is another one. Yeah. You just
yeah,
take
it's
what you
all this
need
stuff is
and drop it
great.
in.
Toolboxes are always good. There's a reason why AD&D is still loved to this day is because there's a lot of tools in there which can be plugged out and plugged into anything else as
Right.
well, even besides the game being very good.
Right. Yes.
Itself. But yeah, like you said, the political stuff in the background is going to be important for people to understand why that region is the way it is, as
Right.
well as if people want to engage with it. It's there. That's cool to have. And I know sometimes I like I'll go from wanting to just jump into a dungeon for a while and just go in and out and then hex call a bit to then be like, okay, cool. I'm setting up a guild and I'm gonna make connections to different people. Okay, cool. I need members. I got some members. Yeah, I'll create a character myself and play with that character as well. They interact with the world. They find out what's going on in their city. Then he's trying to start influence things. Your web sort of grow from there.
Well, and the other reason for adding a bunch of information about an NPC or a region or whatever is that it if the game master themselves understands what's going on,
Mhm.
they can impart that information in bits and pieces to their players so that their players understand what's going on. If their players don't understand what's going on, then a lot of their actions, in this case, like, oh, I'm going to go create a guild, it's going to fall down to nothing more than a set of mechanical dice rolls
Mhm.
without any real interaction or role play or thought that goes into it. Like, oh, well, I rolled under my charisma stat, so I guess I was able to create a guild. There's no more detail than that. And I
Yeah.
guess depending on what you're doing, I mean, if you want to play essentially a board game that amounts to Risk with extra rules, that's fine. But I don't think that that's the reason that any of us come to play a role playing game. We
Mhm.
want to get invested in that world, and
Yeah.
so we don't want it to be just a matter of dice rolls. You know, there has to be more to it.
Yeah, your background of the world needs to make sense, and the background of the world needs to make sense while you're playing it. It's like we said before, like game systems is like the physics of the world,
Right.
and how information is given to players from the referee. That is like the sense and the feel of the world. So
Right.
you have your physics, you have the sense of self of the world from the NPCs and the players' interaction with the NPCs. And that one makes everything feel believable, as well as, again, it makes you sort of like able to role play better as well. Because you're like,
Right.
oh, I believe this character believes what he believes and he understands what he understands. And the information he's given me, maybe he's lying about some things, or maybe he doesn't know he's lying, or maybe he doesn't have the whole picture. But you're able to get things from them, and everything just, it comes together like dough.
Yes.
You can mold it what way you want then as a referee.
And a
Maybe,
lot of times you don't even realize that dough came together
yeah.
until you're done playing the game. So I can look back in my mind. I can think back to the really good game sessions and the game sessions that were not so good. I mean, I'm pretty much a forever DM. So I can't be perfect every time. It's just not possible. But when I think back to the game sessions that weren't that good, I see a bunch of people in my mind's eye. I see a bunch of people sitting around the table rolling dice. When I think back to the sessions that were really good and had some excellent role play, that is not what I see at all. I see the characters in the keep. I see the characters lighting the torch as they enter the dungeon. Like, it is like a
In your mind.
movie to me.
Yeah. That is weird, dude. Because I was talking to, okay, on my friend's server, we had this big chainmail battle. It was huge. It's like 18,000 troops, and we have everything condensed down, the different blocks. And we all like war games for the most part.
Right.
And one of the players is a friend of mine. He's a really cool guy. I don't think he's never really played a war game, and he didn't expect it to take as long as it did. And there wasn't really a lot of role play stuff in it. But how I described it to him is each turn and every action we take, I can literally see what's going on from, because I've played a lot of war games. I grew up playing war games. I love them. I think they're great fun. But I can see the action in my head.
Yes.
Even though you're just moving little blocks, or in case we're playing online, you're moving tokens around, and then you have your turns and stuff like that. X amount of people are eliminated here and there, and then magic goes off, and dragons, and all this crazy stuff.
Right.
It's like you said, I can literally visualize everything that's going on. It's like watching. It's like when you watch Lord of the Rings and Helm's Deep. That's what I saw. I could see the action play, and I was on the edge of my seat, literally about to poop myself. I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I still have a mental breakdown. We all nearly did. It was brilliant. But yeah, you get the same thing when you're role playing. If you're role playing well and the information you're getting makes sense and works well, you can see everything that's going on. Same when you're in a dungeon, you can see yourself going down around that corner as you're drawing it out. You think, okay, what's going on here? Or if your buddy's drawing out and you're watching it, or if you're doing things on Discord, you can see things and you're like, okay, cool, I know what's going on. And then all of a sudden, roll me dice.
Right, exactly.
And then that's the one monster encounter, maybe a counter something, or you don't. So if you do, it's something sneaking behind you or coming up from a corner you don't know, and you can visualize it. Yeah, all that stuff comes together. And sometimes, like, if you're tired or your players are tired or it's been, you're just having a bit off. It's not gonna. You can't have.
Yeah, it just doesn't come together.
You can't have absolute cinema moments every game.
Right. Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
and so like there's a session that I call the maintenance session, and it always happens probably anywhere between every 5 to 10 game session.
Mhm.
Sooner or later, your players or your characters have so much crap that they have to either or they have so much crap that's broken. And so now, you have almost an entire session of them going on shopping trips,
Yeah.
going to the blacksmith to get things repaired, going to schmooze the noble so that they can get things that may be outside of their reach. And no matter what you do, it's going to take up that entire 5-hour session. Like, you can try to speed things along, but it's going to happen. And my advice and other game masters that run into this, my advice is don't try to speed it along, because if your players are engaged in role playing that situation, you've done your job. They are being entertained.
Yeah.
And so allow it to take place. You might not get any further along in your storyline that you wanted to, but your job as a game master is to present the world for them to role play in. And if they're doing that, then you have successfully completed your mission.
Yeah, not everything needs to be combat all the time.
Exactly.
And like, if a game session is a lot of intrigue or finding out what's going on, that's the players using their own critical thinking skills, figuring things out. Okay, what do I need for the next place we're going to? What do I know about the area? Oh, it's in a cold mountainous area. Okay, now I need to get gear that's going to be appropriate for that. I'm going to get extra spikes. I'm going to get extra rope, because you never know. You might need them. And we have them there if we have them. Get fur jackets or coats or whatever case might be. You say if you have rules that you implement for cold or exposure, I have something to deal with that. There's lots of ways you can do in lots of different games, and I enjoy that kind of stuff. I like to think critically as best as I can. Obviously, you're gonna have off moments, but when I'm playing, but yeah, that's stuff I would do. And I like to see if I'm refereeing a game, if I see other players doing that, it makes me so happy. It's like,
right.
You're thinking ahead. You know what you want to do next, or you know where you're going to go next.
Right.
So you start doing things that are appropriate for where that case might be. And that can be same thing in a dungeon. If you just exit the dungeon and going back in the next session, you know what's going to be on the second level or whatever the case might be, or you had a glimpse of it. We've heard rumors, and some of the rumors are turned to be true. Okay, well, I figured out I need a lot of holy water.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So yeah.
Oils of bless.
Yeah. But yeah, this has been awesome. And I think there's definitely one more question to ask. What do you think the future of the OSR is going to be?
Wow. And that's a tough question. So what I see happening, I don't know if my prediction is worth a grain of salt, but what I see happening right now is the impossible is happening. Evidently, hell froze over because Wizards of the Coast is no longer, D&D is no longer sitting on top, or if they are, there are quite a few pegs down from where they were, and they're making their attempts. I don't think that this rebranding of D&D 2024 to 5.5e, which we were all calling it anyways, I don't think that's going to solve their problem. I can tell them what their problem is. So as I referred to previously, those campaign books that came out, I would refer them to as the Disneyland ride. And that the players they made a character, that's their ticket to get on the Tomb of Annihilation roller coaster, and they will ride that ride to the end, and it's on rails, and it will get to the end, and they had a good time, and then they will go to the next book. They haven't released any of those. And so, of course, their player base is like, oh, we have to think for ourselves. We have to use our own imagination to come up with adventures. So that's a big problem for them.
Yeah.
So they're not at the top of the food chain. Um, I don't think that Paizo is necessarily in a position to take over. They have their own problems with their own player base and how they're viewed. So what that really leaves is you've got as far as the fantasy gaming market, you've got a lot of indie developers, right?
Yeah.
That are in a position to kind of come in and reorder this whole thing. I don't think at this point, there for a while, and you probably saw this probably within the last 2 years. It seemed like every other week there was somebody else coming out with an entirely new game system, you know, and it started to get a little ridiculous. Out of that, of course, the cream rose to the top. You had things like shadowdark that was absolutely fantastic. Uh, what was the other one? The sci-fi one was really good too. I can't think of its name. Anyways, you had a couple that really shined through, and not only did they shine through as being excellently written games, they have now sat at the top and maintained. I think that is going to be um, our new order of things. And like we've said before, if you play one OSR game, you can pretty much play all of them.
Yeah.
If you were to take a
Pretty much
stat
changed.
block, yeah, they're all interchangeable, right? And the nice thing about that is because they're all in some form or another based on first edition AD&D. It all goes back to that. I mean, Castles and Crusades has been likened to being the spiritual AD&D third edition that would have
Mhm.
been if WotC had not bought TSR, and I highly believe that's true. That is a good um, that is a good description of what that game is. And so you have all of these that are interchangeable. You can take a stat block from OSC and you can drop it into Castles and Crusades, and it will run just fine. You don't have to do anything spectacular. I remember when third edition came out in 2000, and there was this entire about 10-page booklet about converting your characters from AD&D second edition over to the new third edition. I'm like, oh my god, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to
Mhm.
make a new character. I
Yeah.
am not going to do that much work. So that's not really an issue anymore. You're talking about a few minor tweaks and they're good to go in another system. And I think that we're going to start seeing more of that. And I think that the OSR is going to start leaning more into individual campaign settings, adventures, or essentially toolkit rules modules that can be dropped in or taken out as you see fit. I
Yeah.
think that's where we're going. Um, Maybe the rumors of a sixth edition Dungeons and Dragons are true. Um, it seems a little weird and poor timing if that is the case. But if that is true, maybe they'll reclaim their crown. But
Mhm.
I really see that the future of gaming in general is going to be more of the indie developers rather than the major corporations.
Yeah, I agree. When you look at people, I know in the US you have a lot of cons and stuff like that. When you look at people sign up for games, the second most signed up games are indies.
Yes.
And some places it's like the first. And like even Shadowdark. Shadowdark is still an indie project.
Yep.
It's being done by like three people.
Yep.
Kelsey, her wife, and like one or two others in the background
Right.
for the most part. That's as indie as it gets. It's literally a
Right.
home business. When
Right.
you look at it
Yeah.
like that,
Working
which
out
is
of their
not really
basement.
successful and lucky. And they were very smart about how they went about things. But yeah, I think you're right because I know me and my friend Matt. He's a game developer. We've talked about this as well before. We talked about it on my channel. The retro clone, I think that's pretty much done and over with. It's people, we already have a bunch of different rule sets which cover pretty much everything, and adventures, settings. Like I said, the funny thing, he actually talked about tool sets as well, toolboxes, all that stuff together. And I want to play with this game over here, but I like what you made over there. Okay, cool. Let's put it over here. Okay, I'm not going to use the save and throws from your game. I'm going to use the statistics, my stats from here, and everything else is good to go. Bang, it's problem solved. Even when it comes to like the class stuff, there's going to be minimum changes. Oh no, the hit dice is one up or one less. Oh no,
right. It's not that big of a deal.
I don't know. I don't have any brain cells.
right.
But I think that's the way it's going to go. I've talked to a few other creators before, and they think the same thing. And there's a lot of people seem to come to the same conclusion who haven't talked to each other, and they're all in the same sort of space. It's again, like I said, last 3 years or so, maybe a little more. You've seen stuff explode, and some things have sort of settled in. Even like you have OSR 3 coming out, that's sort of like setting its own stuff a bit more, trying to identify itself as its own thing, and not just like a copy. It's like expanding and changing.
They're actually expanding on it.
Yeah, stuff like that. So I think that's the way things are going on, like you said as well. And I think that covers things pretty well, I think. Thank you, Christopher, for coming on. This is absolutely brilliant. I had a great time. I can't believe how much time went by. It's 1 hour and 36 minutes. I did not feel that. I felt like we were here for like 35.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you for everything. And guys, remember, check out his YouTube channel, his drive through. You can pick up his stuff. If you found it even half as infectious as I did in how he talks about his setting and his adventures, go check them out. They're all there. You can get PDFs and print on demand stuff for a lot of his stuff already as it is. And I think some of your new stuff is going to have some more print on demand stuff on the way.
I do have more print on demand stuff. So the weather in the Midwest and southern part of the United States increased printing times drastically. I was anticipating to have Werewolves of Lendon and the Sunken Fortress of Varkuth out for print on demand already, and because of that, I just got notification last Friday that they had printed the books and they were shipping them to me. So it's probably going to be maybe another week before those are available. There has also been a vast draconian increase in the printing costs, and so I decided that I was going to take a bit of a hit on how much I make per book. The Braunhaven Player's Guide, I took a hit on it, and I've lowered the price down to $45 because the $50 is just that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, and I understand it. So I lowered it to 45, which is pretty much about the base minimum that I could move it to. And I'm trying to lessen that on some of the other books. Having said that, a lot of the books, even the one that I'm currently working on, which is just a supplemental splat book, they're all going to be hardcover premium color. And the reason for that is that some of the soft cover books that I've purchased or ordered in the past, I don't know if you've had this experience, but like you use them 4 or 5 times and then the glue and the pages start to come out. It is what it is. That happens. It's not just print on demand. That happens with books that you can go to buy at Barnes and Noble. I mean, that's just the way of things. But I find that the hardcover books are much more durable, and so I'm trying to lean in that direction. That, of course, drives the cost up a little bit, but the quality is much better. So.
Personally, I do like the hardbacks better usually. I actually haven't had any issues with print on demand stuff. The thing with drive-through and print on demand, it's gonna depend on region to region massively, because don't have dedicated printers, they send things out to the local printers to where the customer is that they can have access to. A lot of my stuff gets printed in England and it gets shipped to Ireland, so usually the quality is very high, even for print and demand stuff. But yeah, guys, remember, check out Christopher's stuff. Again, link in the pinned comment and description where you can find everything and get some awesome gaming stuff. So thank you, Christopher, for coming on. I definitely hope to have you back on again, and we can have more infectious laughter and entertainment and talk about the future for things.
Absolutely would love to.
That's brilliant, guys. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this one. Remember, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Thank you, and goodbye.